Finance meeting for September 15th to order, and having no public comment registered, we'll move to the approval items. Item 1 is the Finance Committee minutes.
I'll make a motion. We approve the minutes as presented.
I'll second the motion. I'll abstain from the vote. I wasn't here, but
Okay, any comments or questions? All those in favor? Show of hands. Okay. And one abstention, so 2-0 and 1.
Commissioner Cook made the motion, Commissioner Stevens seconded, Commissioner Stevens abstained.
Okay, item 2 is the CIPP project for Sea Palms West. Andrew, you want to offer the highlights on that?
Yes, sir.
one?
Sea Palms West CIPP, this is being paid for out of remaining SPLOST 5 funds transferred by Glynn County through previous intergovernmental agreement. This was considered at the Facilities Committee. The low bid was by Advanced Plumbing Technology in the amount of $223,745.34. After review, we are unfamiliar with them. After review of their previous work history, they have never completed a municipal sanitary sewer CIPP project of more than 2,900 linear feet. This project is 6,700 linear feet in an established neighborhood, and we've had previous issues in this neighborhood with line repairs and CIPP projects being very complicated. Due to the lack of history of projects of this size, for the low bidder, for the size and complexity of this job, staff recommends we actually award to the second low bidder, In Situ Form Technologies, in the amount of $309,698.20. It's a 150-day contract. Remaining funding in the SPLOST budget is $328,200.51, so we have a little bit of cushion there. There are some as-needed work items in the contract, so I will point out that in all likelihood the number will come in slightly higher than the 309 because the as-needed work items will bring in there.
Okay, the chair will entertain a motion with this comment. This did receive approval to forward to the full commission with the Facilities Committee last hour.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend the full commission award a contract for Sea Palms West CIPP rehabilitation to Institute Form Technologies LLC in the amount of $309,698.20.
I'll second. I do have questions. I'll second the motion.
Okay, let's proceed to questions and comments.
So the unit prices in here, was there an assumption of how many unit prices there are, or is it just?
The unit prices were provided based off the quantities that we gave them.
It looks like a lot of them are just one.
Quantity 1 on the as-needed items. So items 10 through 14 would be if we came to a section that needed that item,
Right.
They would get, that's why I say it's going to come in a little bit more than the 309, because if we have 3 lines that need heavy cleaning, they would charge that 3 times. And I will say the flowable fill complete in place, we used 100 cubic yards there. In all likelihood, we will not have to do any flowable filling, but that is another item that would be an as-needed basis.
So are we pre-qualifying these companies? Because I hear your point. You know, they're not.
We do not pre-qualify on standard bids. We pre-qualify for large contracts, so we pre-qualify for the Academy Creek job. But for a traditional bid like this, our practices has not been to pre-qualify.
Commissioner Stevens, you must have heard from the previous meeting because I asked the same question.
Was asked.
It's a good question because I asked it too.
You know, I understand the point, but it gives me heartburn when it's 50% higher than the.
I understand.
Than the low bid.
Yeah, the comment I offered was that they're probably not familiar with the area, and it represented a red flag for me for them. Some of their unit numbers being significantly different than
Well, that's what I was
others.
just trying to digest. Just,
Yes. I mean, there's some things that obviously jump off the page there as
Yes.
seems out of whack.
Well, some of it, it's just. I don't mean to delay the meeting, but I guess it's really the only thing on the meeting today. I mean, some of the unit pricing are just right there in line. Some of them are actually, the low bid's a little higher than the second low bid. I mean, some of the big differences there is like the bypass pumping I mean, that's a fixed cost. And honestly, the company we're choosing is the highest in that line item.
Now, I will say on the bypass pumping, people structure their bids a little differently. Some of the companies don't put as much in bypassing because they include the cost of bypassing into the actual liner portion of the job. So typically you would expect if the bypass is higher, the unit cost on the lining would be lower. For the apparent low bidder, the bypassing was low and the unit cost was low, so kind of don't know how that's going to work out.
And also, I just wonder, it's kind of all over the board in some of these, but
I will say that the apparent low bidder was on 13 of the 18 line items, was more than 50% lower than the median bid of everybody else. And my thoughts on the matter, staff, we've discussed this. I feel like if we went with the apparent low bidder, we would be seeing change orders when they got up there and figured out that it was a more complex project than as bid. And if we did not see change orders, we'd have a contractor probably losing a substantial amount of money on this job.
The company that staff has recommended to, they've been in the business longer than any other company that's bid.
I think they invented the process.
yeah, I get it. It just gives them heartburn. If we pass it through today, I mean, do you have some more information you can provide so we can have to digest it tonight before we prepare for tomorrow?
I can send you the references and things that they sent us, the project scope that they've done. Certainly would be able to pass those forward.
Okay. I mean, I'm fine with moving it for tomorrow, but I definitely want to digest it a little more, and shame on me for not doing it last night.
Okay. Other questions or comments? We have a motion and second for item number 2. I'll call for the vote. All those in favor? Okay, passes. Thank you.
One other quick question. Have we reached out to them and said, look, we're just not comfortable with what you provided, and asked for additional information?
We asked for additional information. They provided back that their numbers stood as bid.
To some extent, that's worth something. If somebody, you reach out to somebody and say, hey, you were significantly low, and they start panicking,
Right.
that's kind of a red flag. But if they say, well, I'm gonna hate to left money on the table, but
Sure.
I stand by it, that's
I 100% agree. Yes, sir.
okay.
You good?
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Roberts. Our bond issuance update, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the floor. Wanted to bring you up to speed of the activities that have occurred since we have first begun discussing this. I guess the first place I can start is to give us a little bit of history to remind us how we got to where we are. You may recall that we had identified $15 million worth of projects that we had placed on the 2021 SPLOST referendum. Unfortunately, that referendum did not pass. We did believe those projects were important enough to continue to pursue funding for those. We had those specific infrastructure needs, and what we have done is we've categorized those into 4 particular bullet points, and this is how we've identified those in the subsequent bond that we did pursue. These are sewer projects to repair gravity sewers and rehab wastewater treatment processes, water rehabilitation projects to water mains, water and sewer extensions to unserved areas of Glynn County, and installation of increased water storage capacity. And once again, we tried to be as general as we could with the descriptions of those to allow ourselves some movement within those, but specific enough so that the bondholders knew specifically which projects those were that we were trying to accomplish. You may recall we had 2 different financial advisor presentations. One was at the May 19th Finance Committee, and then again at the full commission on June the 17th. We then asked the commission on July the 15th to consider an intent to issue revenue bonds resolution that the commission did pass on that particular day. That gave staff the ability to move forward with the activities that needed to be accomplished in order to get these bonds issued, and given the appropriate power to the particular staff members that needed it for those activities. Staff then put together a credit rating presentation that we presented to Moody's on August the 4th. Moody's did confirm our bond rating of AA3. And just to remind you what AA3 is there, it's indicated as a very strong investment grade bond. Sorry, trying to make sure that I use the same language that's there on the slide. Once we had our confirmed bond rating, we did go out to market. So the bond sale occurred on the morning of August the 19th. You'll see there that, again, that the successful bidder was FHN, Financial Capital Markets. May not be able to see the TIC, or the total interest cost there, which is the all-in cost, but for that particular bidder, it was 2.084% Next lowest bidder was at 2.085. So you see how close those were as far as the bids for those particular bonds. Later that day, we came to you for your approval on a supplemental bond resolution, as well as the confirmation of that sale that I mentioned earlier that morning. We did receive both of those approvals from the commission. Thank you. So we continued to move forward. Next activity was a bond validation hearing that occurred on September the 7th. This was in the Superior Court of Glynn County. Our Counselor Dormany accompanied us for that particular presentation. That went off without a hitch, maybe even a 15-minute appointment, if that. And then we held our pre-closing on September 10th here in the offices of the JWC. You'll see bond attorney John Pinnell there in the foreground, and then our chair and vice chair there with our executive director and our executive assistant performing all of their duties in the pre-closing as far as signatures. Don't know if you can see very closely or not, but Chairman Turnipseed is actually holding the bonds. The green paper there are the bonds themselves. I did receive word actually during our facilities committee that all other closing signatures have now been obtained. So we are just now waiting that final closing call that will occur tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. That is the final and formal closing. At that particular time, the transfer of the funds will also occur, and once the bond counsel is satisfied that everything is in order, they will pronounce the issue closed and the bonds will be released to the underwriter at that particular time. So in a period of basically 2 months, staff has gone from approval of the commission to move forward with the issue to actually having the issue closed. That 60-day time frame was very aggressive according to both our bond attorney and our financial advisor, so the fact that we were able to accomplish it with their assistance in that particular time was certainly commendable by everyone, so I want to thank everyone who was involved for that. And here we come to the final results. Principal of the bonds was $15,815,000. There was an original issue premium, which meant that the bonds were trading higher than the face value of the bonds. So we recognized another $146,860.15. We did have the underwriter's fees of $107,037.66 for net bond proceeds of $15,854,822.49. Final maturity of those bonds will be June the 1st, 2043. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Couple comments.
Yes, sir.
First of all, congrats
Thank you.
on shepherding this process over a 60-day period. As you mentioned, very aggressive, but I'm very pleased that we were able to accomplish that. So thank you very much for leading that effort. And one other thing I might ask is for tomorrow's update.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, by the way, of providing the update and the brief history of where we started this and where we are today.
Certainly.
What you might want to offer again is, here are the projects. Andrew, you may want to speak specific to some of those, and I would suggest you may want to just offer a thumbnail level sketch of a schedule.
Okay.
So it would, given that it's a live stream meeting, that the public can understand not only were we successful in receiving the funding, but what we project we will complete in the period of time. And given that the challenges that we've experienced in the construction side, particularly on supply chain, I think it might be beneficial to offer that.
Absolutely.
Certainly.
So those are my thoughts and comments.
We'll be
Commissioners,
getting our-
anything else?
We'll be getting our first proposals for projects funded with this September 28th. So we're jumping right on it.
Yeah, I think that's terrific to have. We anticipated success, and with that expectation, we moved ahead with design, essentially getting projects that are shovel-ready this month. So that's very aggressive, and I think it's very positive for us to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And then our final item is our financial report for the month ending in August. Francis, please.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. We have the financials as of August the 31st, 2021. Before we get into this, I will note that our audit is still ongoing. It is progressing along. We are still in the providing documentation and doing some adjusting entries. So the plan is to bring the audit before the commission in the October meeting. So we're still aiming for that deadline. On that note, again, please note the comparison column is still June 30th, 2020. We will not make that change until the audit is complete, because it would require to keep going back and changing those numbers. So less chances for error. Our bond sinking fund is still increasing. It will continue to increase until we make our first interest payment on December the 1st. We're funding that at $246,000 a month. If you move down to capital assets, our construction in progress, that $9.2 million is June 30th, 2020. I will note that our June 30th, 2021 number is $21,198,000. That is recorded on our project report. So we're already up at $24 million in expenses, so we are moving right along in this fiscal year. Current liabilities, you'll note that it is at $2 million as of August the 31st. Our June 30th, 2021 number was almost $3 million. And again, that is a timing issue. If the expenses were incurred in June, they had to be reported in June, even though they had not been paid till July or August. As of today, that number is down to $573,000. So that will fluctuate month to month. And as the construction in progress number increases, generally the retainage increases, and it did. It's tripled since 2020. It was $300,000 on June 2021. It was $692,000, and we're up to $932,000.
We'll note that over $500,000 of that retainage is on the wastewater plant, so
Yeah.
it's a chunk of that.
Interest payable, that is increasing. That is also includes the bond interest, so that will continue to also go up. Page 2. Customer deposits payable is holding at 2.5. And I will note that the net pension liability, the number is still the same as the 2020 number. That entry has not been done. That is generally the last adjusting entry done. It does require 2 reports from GMEBS, and we have reached out to them, and they are getting together those reports to provide to the auditors before this entry is made.
Okay.
Any questions on the balance sheet? Page 3. Summary revenue. We are over our projected revenues as of August the 31st. We're up by $700,000. And we will note that other income is up by $201,000. That includes the $157,000, almost $158,000 good faith deposit we received in August. That was returned as of yesterday. But we did record that in other revenues. So
Say that one more time, please.
The good faith deposit for the bond issuance. So that was recorded in the middle of August, and it was refunded back to them yesterday. They needed it back before the official closing tomorrow. We are over budget by $719,000 on operating expenses, and it brings us pretty much to a break-even point as of August the 31st.
Well, the over budget includes encumbrances, several of which are year-long encumbrance amounts.
That's my next report. I will note that on the bottom of the page for capital tap improvement fees, we're at $333,000 for revenue on those as of July and August.
Be more specific there, Andrew, if you don't mind, or either
Sure.
one of y'all would.
So on the purchase orders, the encumbrances and the operating costs, you got $1 million worth of operating expenses purchase orders, and that if without the purchase orders, we're not $700,000 over budget for the year. But say our water treatment chemicals, we have annual POs for those amount that we put in, so that may be $400,000 or
That is-
$500,000 of that is annual POs.
And we
So
do.
they will remain encumbrances, and we bill against them throughout the year. So it's not you don't.
It's a
multiply
timing
that
issue.
number out. It's a timing issue.
So y'all don't accrue that monthly then?
We do, but we put the PO for the full amount in July 1st. Because we know how much chemical we're going to use, or project how much chemical we're going to use and draw
That's
against
for
it.
the whole fiscal year.
That's for the whole fiscal year.
But you draw down on that
1/12.
PO
Yeah,
as,
roughly
As
1/12.
as each invoice comes through, we draw against that.
right.
So if you look at expenses, it's at 3.026 versus the budget of 3.77. The encumbrances is what kicks us in the over budget for the time being.
Yeah, I just don't know that that accurately reflects what you're trying to, I
Okay.
mean, I see your point, 100%, I mean, but it seems like when it was accrued is where it would, seems like we'd only be, what month are we in?
You're saying the
2 months,
purchase,
we're in
the
the second-
purchase
we're in the
orders should
second
only
month
be
of the fiscal
accrued to
year.
that point.
It just seems like, for,
Right.
if you're trying to annualize data, you'd only show, 2/12 of that or 1/6 of that.
Right. Right. Makes sense.
If you'll move on to page 4, I'll go into that a little deeper. On the expense portion, again, as Mr. Burrows said, that the part of that over budget there includes the 1.47, and I did run a PO report. So our department heads have already started with their capital purchases. So we have a bypass pump, a couple of new vehicles, some other pumps, some directional drill, a capital purchase for a UV module for the UV system, and some long-term water monitoring. And again, the expenses are generally annualized, and 1/12 are allocated each month. So as it moves along, this will level out. But with the supply chain issues that we have, and also the lead times required on some of these products, they've went ahead and done their work, put the purchase order in, and as we allocate 1/12 each month, this will level out. Any other questions on the expenses on page 4? Okay. Moving on to page 5. Our cash balances statement. Our cash and cash equivalents as of August 31st was $4.9 million. Mr. Burrows spent almost $1.8 million on 9/2 for Ruby Collins for a payout. It goes quickly.
Never tell an engineer you have cash.
Yes. On the general checking account, we're at 260. That number's a little higher than what we normally carry. As we mentioned, with the good faith deposit, that landed in our checking account, and we just left it there. It was refunded yesterday, so that balance dropped back down. Our group insurance for United Healthcare, that's at $13,000. It was a minimum balance of $28,000. That minimum balance has been up to $29,000, but we did carry over $15,000 payable at the end of August, so that dropped that down to $13,000. Our elective reserves holding, we're up about $3 million more than we were this time last year. Most of that reflects in the R&R reserve. Page 6, the capital improvement fees. I had mentioned earlier that through August the 31st, we've taken in a little over $300,000 for tap fees. The fiscal year 21 total was 1.9 million, almost $2 million on that. It's $1,962,892. So that number increased. On our SPLOST account, we started off with a little over 15 million because we had the 15 million plus the intergovernmental agreement funds, and we're down to 5.8. So we are slowly using that money up. Any questions?
And this is on a project basis, just as a reminder to go along with this declining fund balance for SPLOST. Andrew, we have a number of those projects that are quite active. And
Yes.
when do we anticipate we'll finish those? What's our,
May. The long-term project is,
Right.
the longest-term project, the force main and gravity install, that's currently projected to finish in May.
so in the next 7 months, we'll basically
Deplete
be
that.
down to zero. It'll all be encumbered at least. We may not have paid it all out.
Yes,
Okay. Thank you.
you're welcome. The project report, page 7. As I had mentioned earlier with the construction in progress numbers, our fiscal year 20 number was 9.2. The fiscal year 21 new work done was 16.6 million. We capitalized 4.6 million, which brought us back to our 21 million number for cost as of June 30th, 2021. I will note that, as Mr. Burrows had mentioned, his facilities rehab project is moving right along. $2 million of that $3.3 million of new expenses is the Academy Creek. I will note that on that project, GFA has already started allocating us loan forgiveness. So as of June the 31st, it was $71,000. We've had 2 more draws since then. I think we're up to like 126 maybe. It's over $100,000, and I think we're allowed that up to $750,000.
Okay.
If you'll notice on project 2101, that's a capital project for $3.5 million. On the next page, you will note that that will make the available balance on that into a negative number as we allocate $25,000. We have already funded $25,000 this month. The next, that will put that number back in the red, because the budget project for that was 3.5 million. We're not quite at the 3.5 million mark. Also, we'll note on project 2028, we're in the negative there. That is scrap sales on those meters, the old meters that could no longer be used from the
Get
new
a-
project.
A whole $2 a meter we sell back to somebody on that, so.
And there is movement on that project. We have yet to get a new invoice from Delta. Ms. Roberts has nudged them along to provide us with some invoices for that.
Now, are we accruing amounts for that? I mean, we know how much work they're completing on a monthly basis.
Yes, so right now they're in that audit phase though.
Right.
You may recall that we've tasked them with going back and going each year and bringing us an inventory audit for requirements for the change out going forward. So the expenditures for them have not been as great, so they don't seem to be as motivated to get their invoicing in as they were when they were looking at materials that they were storing and other costs of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, page 8. I've already mentioned the capital reserve negative available balance there. Capital improvement fund reserves for this year is $333,000 through July and August. And I would like to note that the balances changed from July on this June 30th balance. 2 reasons. The first reason was I made an error in the report for July, as each time we incur new expenses from June 30th and I had to go back and recalculate, I picked up the wrong numbers, so that was my error on that. But also, as we incurred and processed the June 30th invoices, or fiscal year 21 invoices, this worksheet calculates balances as if the expenses were incurred and paid as of June 30th. So every time we had to process one, it shifted all those numbers, and we had to go back and do recalculations for June 30th.
Okay.
One note on fair market value, I have mentioned that before. Those are unrealized gains and losses. Those numbers do not reflect on a project report. When we do our investments, the planning is long-term, and usually our investments mature at the par value, and there's generally a gain on that. And of course, our interest income, we get 2 deposits from those for each security each year. So fair market value adjusting entry would reflect on the cash accounts, but we do not incorporate those into our project reports.
Okay.
Any questions?
None for me.
We're all good, commissioners?
No. Good.
Thank you, Francis.
Thank you.
Yeah, I thought you said you had a question. I was waiting, I'm sorry. I might be doing something wrong just playing napkin math here, but, and I think I asked this question a while back and that you answered it and it was satisfactory, but I just don't remember. But the numbers here, just intuitively, you would think, starting at the top, adding up, you get to the bottom and they
Which page are you on?
5 and 6.
5 and 6. Okay, so the operating and debt service totals come down to be the 5.2.
Okay, and that's.
And then the
subtotal.
bond sinking is a separate number.
Okay.
Then we come down to the elective reserves, and those total 33. We
Okay.
move over to the bond,
That's what I'm missing there. 'Cause
the bond
intuitively-
trustee. Yes, each
intuitively, You
section,
take the 5265 as a subtotal, then everything above the 33 would be a subtotal.
no, it's, yeah, it's the bond.
Can we just make it where it's
I
clearer
can do
that-
a little,
'Cause I'm gonna ask the same question every month if we don't.
I can
make it
do a
where-
little thing at the bottom that gives
Reasonable
you,
question.
I mean, it's just when you look at the numbers, it just doesn't add up. And it's because all the subtotals don't add up to the total.
and it's because some of the subtotals reflect into other worksheets.
We will make sure it is more clear next month, sir.
Yes.
So with that being said,
So-
I mean, ultimately, the reason I was doing napkin math is just trying to understand what we have total cumulatively in the BB&T overnight. And just taking an assumption here and adding those subtotals up, it's,
So
5
it's-
million, 11 million, 16 million, it's almost $20 million.
Yes, sir.
And that it gives me heartburn. It's given me heartburn since day one, but I just hate keeping $20 million in a cash account that's not doing anything.
Yes, sir.
We have,
Drives me nuts.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I realize interest rates are bad right now, but, 2 years ago when we were getting 2% for a 30-day bond or a 30-day, CD, I mean, that's real money when you got $20 million sitting there in cash. So I'd like to fix this process so that if it ever does come back,
Yes, sir.
am I
Okay.
misspeaking or y'all?
No, you are not misspeaking.
Okay.
we do like to leave a little bit of cash in these.
Sure, I'm not talking about locking it up for 100 years or anything.
Right.
I'm just saying if you lock money up for 30 days,
Well, we are setting up a meeting with Synovus in the upcoming weeks to do like an annual performance review.
Right.
So,
and if you take it, if you just take 30 days, let's make it 40 days to make it even math, and have it on a 4-week cycle where every week,
Right.
10 million of it is coming along. Then you always got 25%. Even if it's cycling in every 4 weeks, it doesn't have to be January 1st. You lock $20 million in for 30 days. You could lock for $5 million in on January 1st, $5 million in on January 10th, $5 million on January 20th.
well, we can bring that up with Michael Harden when we have a meeting with him in a couple of weeks.
Okay, I just hate having that big of cash doing nothing for us. So even if you're getting, 0.25% on $20 million, that's something.
It adds up. Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments?
I think we're good now.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Other general comments or questions for Finance Committee?
Where are we at in general with the deposit returns?
We do that process monthly. So we're going through some of the commercial deposits. We're still working through, because they need 5 years for commercial versus 3 years. But we're seeing, luckily, sustained growth right now. So the new deposits are offsetting any returns in deposits we're getting.
What about, REU audits?
They're done.
We've done everything?
They're done. We do it annually.
Right,
But yes, they are done. And a few people have been adjusted.
That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Trip.
Set.
Commissioner,
No.
are we good?
Yep.
All right, we're adjourned then for Finance Committee. Thank you.